David Chen sat in his corner office on the 32nd floor, staring at the city lights below. At 34, he had everything most people dreamed of. A successful tech company, a luxury apartment, expensive cars, and enough money in the bank to retire early if he wanted. But there was one thing missing from his perfect life, and his mother reminded him about it every single day. "When are you going to get married?" she would ask during their weekly phone calls. "All your cousins are already settled. They have children running around the house. What am I supposed to tell people when they ask about you?" David would always give the same answer. "Mom, I'm focused on my career right now. When the right person comes along, I'll know." But deep down, he was getting tired of the dating scene. Every woman he met seemed more interested in his bank account than getting to know him as a person. His parents had moved to Singapore from mainland China 30 years ago, with nothing but hope and determination. They worked day and night, saved every penny, and built a small trading business from scratch. Now that business had grown into something much bigger, and David was supposed to take over one day. But there was a catch. His parents believed that a successful man needed a good wife to complete him. In our culture, his father would say, marriage is not just about two people, it's about two families coming together. It's about continuing traditions and building something that lasts. David understood this, but he also lived in a modern world where people married for love, not convenience. He had dated several women over the years, but nothing ever worked out. Some were too focused on their own careers to think about family. Others wanted to change everything about his life. A few were only interested in the lifestyle his money could provide. The pressure from his family kept getting stronger. His mother would show up at his office with photos of potential brides. She would invite suitable families to dinner and conveniently forget to mention it until the last minute. She even created profiles on marriage websites without telling him. "This is getting ridiculous," David told his best friend Kevin one evening over dinner. "Yesterday, my mom ambushed me with a family she met at the grocery store. The daughter was nice enough, but she spent the entire evening taking selfies and posting them online. I don't think we had one real conversation." Kevin laughed. "Your mom is persistent, I'll give her that. But maybe she has a point. You're not getting any younger, and you're always complaining about the dating scene here." David shook his head. "I just want to find someone who gets me, you know? Someone who can challenge me intellectually and doesn't see me as just a walking ATM." 3 months later, his parents dropped a bombshell that changed everything. They called him to the family home for what they said was an important discussion. When David arrived, he found both his parents sitting at the dining table with serious expressions on their faces. "Son," his father began, "we've been patient with you for many years. We've let you focus on building your career and finding your own path. But now it's time for you to think about your responsibilities to this family." His mother placed a folder on the table. Inside were photos of a young woman and what looked like a detailed family background report. "This is Priya Sharma," she said. "She's 28 years old, has a good education, and comes from a respectable family in Mumbai. Her parents are friends of our business associates there." David picked up the photos reluctantly. The woman in the pictures looked plain and unremarkable. She had thick glasses, braces on her teeth, and appeared to be quite overweight. In one photo, she was wearing an oversized sweater that made her look even larger. Her hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, and she seemed uncomfortable in front of the camera. "We've already spoken with her family," his father continued. "They're interested in the match. She works as a software engineer and seems to be a sensible girl with good values." David felt his heart sink. This wasn't what he had imagined for his future. "Mom, Dad, I appreciate what you're trying to do, but I can't marry someone just because you think she's suitable. What about love? What about compatibility?" The day of the meeting finally arrived, and David felt like he was walking to his own execution. He had chosen Marina Bay Hotel's rooftop restaurant for their first encounter, thinking that at least the beautiful view would give them something to talk about if the conversation got awkward. His palms were sweaty as he adjusted his tie for the 10th time that morning. His mother had called him 3 times already. "Remember to be polite," she reminded him. "Ask about her family, her interests, and don't spend too much time on your phone." "This is important, David." "I know, Mom, I'll be respectful," he had replied, though inside he was dreading every minute of what was to come. David arrived at the restaurant 15 minutes early, hoping to get settled and mentally prepare himself. He had memorized everything from the folder his parents gave him. Priya worked as a software engineer at a mid-sized company in Mumbai. She had studied computer science and lived with her parents. Her hobbies included reading and cooking. It all seemed very ordinary and predictable. As he sat at their reserved table, David found himself scanning every woman who entered the restaurant. A tall, elegant woman in a business suit walked in, but she was clearly meeting someone else. An older woman with her daughter passed by his table, but they were too old and too young respectively. Then a group of young professionals entered, laughing and chatting among themselves. The hostess approached his table. "Excuse me, sir, are you waiting for Ms. Priya Sharma?" "Yes, that's right," David replied, straightening up in his chair. "There's a lady at the reception asking for you." "Should I bring her up?" David nodded, taking a deep breath. This was it. Time to meet his future wife, whether he liked it or not. He stood up, smoothed his jacket, and prepared to put on his best polite smile for the woman from the photos. A few minutes later, the hostess returned, leading someone toward his table. David looked up and immediately felt confused. The woman walking toward him looked nothing like the person in the photos. She was tall and graceful, with long, silky black hair that caught the light as she moved. Her skin was clear and glowing, and she wore a simple but elegant navy blue dress that fit her perfectly. "Mr. David Chen?" she asked with a warm smile, extending her hand for a handshake. David stood there for a moment, completely speechless. The woman in front of him was beautiful. Not just pretty, but genuinely beautiful in a way that made him forget what he was supposed to say. "I'm sorry," he finally managed, "but I think there might be some mistake. I'm waiting for Priya Sharma." The woman laughed, and the sound was like music. "I am Priya Sharma. You look surprised. Were you expecting someone else?" David's mind was racing. This couldn't be the same person from the photos. That woman had been overweight with thick glasses and braces. This woman was stunning, confident, and carried herself like someone who was comfortable in her own skin. "Please sit down," he said, still trying to process what was happening. "I'm sorry, The photos I saw looked different." Priya smiled knowingly as she took her seat. "Ah, yes, the photos. I'm guessing your parents showed you some pictures from my college days?" "Around 5 years ago." "Yes, exactly," David admitted, feeling embarrassed about his obvious surprise. "My parents did the same thing to me," she said with a laugh. "They showed me your high school yearbook photo. You know, the one where you had braces and that unfortunate haircut?" David felt his face turn red. He remembered that photo very well. It was from when he was 17, going through an awkward phase with bad skin and glasses that were way too big for his face. "Our parents can be quite sneaky when they want to be," Priya continued. "I think they were worried that if we saw recent photos of each other, we might make judgments based purely on looks." As David looked at her more closely, he began to see subtle similarities to the woman in the photos. The shape of her eyes was the same, and she had the same gentle smile. But everything else had changed dramatically, so what happened? He asked, genuinely curious now. "I mean, you look completely different." Priya seemed comfortable with the question. "A lot happened in 5 years. I lost about 30 pounds through proper diet and exercise. I got laser eye surgery to get rid of the thick glasses. My braces came off 3 years ago. And I suppose working in the corporate world taught me how to dress better and carry myself with more confidence." "That's incredible," David said, and he meant it. "You must have worked really hard." "I did," she replied. "But it wasn't just about looking better. I wanted to feel better about myself. I wanted to be healthy and confident. The physical changes were just a bonus." As they began to talk more, David discovered that Priya's transformation wasn't just physical. The woman sitting across from him was articulate, witty, and surprisingly knowledgeable about his industry. "So you work in tech as well?" David asked, trying to steer the conversation to safer ground. "Yes, I'm a software engineer, but I also do some consulting work on the side," Priya replied. "Actually, I've been following your company's work for a while now. Your new AI-powered customer service platform is quite impressive." David was genuinely surprised. Most people, including his previous dates, had no idea what his company actually did. They knew it was successful and made money, but that was about it. "You know about our platform?" he asked. "Of course. I read about it in Tech Weekly last month. The way you're using machine learning to predict customer needs before they even contact support is brilliant. It could revolutionize customer service across multiple industries." For the next hour, they talked about technology, artificial intelligence, and the future of digital innovation. David found himself leaning forward, genuinely engaged in the conversation. Priya wasn't just beautiful. She was incredibly smart and had insights that he hadn't considered before. "You know what I find interesting about your approach?" Priya said, gesturing with her hands as she spoke. "Most companies focus on responding to customer problems faster, but you're trying to prevent the problems from happening in the first place. It's like the difference between being a firefighter and being a fire prevention specialist." David laughed. "That's actually a perfect analogy. I'm definitely using that in my next presentation." "Feel free," she said with a smile. "I have plenty more where that came from." As the evening progressed, David realized he hadn't thought about the photos or his initial reluctance for the past 2 hours. He was actually enjoying himself. Priya was funny, intelligent, and had a way of challenging his ideas without making him feel defensive. "Can I ask you something?" David said as they shared dessert. "Sure, anything." "Were you as nervous about this meeting as I was?" Priya laughed. "Probably more nervous. I've never done anything like this before. In my family, most marriages are arranged, but I always thought I'd be the exception. I thought I'd fall in love with someone at work or meet someone through friends." "So what changed your mind?" "Honestly, I got tired of dating guys who were either intimidated by my career or only interested in me because I work in tech, and they think that's trendy now. At least with an arranged meeting, I knew your family was serious about finding a real partnership, not just a casual relationship." David nodded, understanding exactly what she meant. "I had the same problem, just from the other side. Women who were more interested in my bank account than getting to know me as a person." "Well," Priya said, raising her coffee cup in a mock toast, "here's to our parents' sneaky matchmaking skills. Who knows, maybe they're smarter than we give them credit for." As the evening came to an end, David walked Priya to her taxi. He found himself not wanting the night to end, which was the last thing he had expected when he woke up that morning. "I had a really good time tonight," he said, and meant it completely. "So did I," Priya replied. "You're nothing like I expected either." "In a good way, I hope?" "Definitely in a good way." As her taxi pulled away, David stood on the sidewalk, feeling like his entire world had shifted. He had come to this meeting expecting to fulfill an obligation to his parents. Instead, he had met someone who challenged him, impressed him, and made him laugh. For the first time in months, he was actually looking forward to a second date. The weeks following their first meeting passed like a blur for David. He found himself thinking about Priya constantly, which was completely unexpected. He would catch himself smiling during boring business meetings when he remembered something funny she had said. His assistant even commented that he seemed more cheerful lately. Their families had arranged for them to meet twice a week, always in public places with subtle supervision. It was traditional, but neither David nor Priya minded. They were both discovering that they actually looked forward to these meetings. Their second date was at the Singapore Botanic Gardens. As they walked along the peaceful paths, David learned more about Priya's personality. She wasn't just smart about technology. She knew about art, history, and had surprisingly strong opinions about everything from local politics to the best street food in Mumbai. "You know what I love about Singapore?" Priya said as they sat by the Swan Lake. "It's like the whole world decided to meet in one place. You have Chinese temples next to Indian restaurants next to Western shopping malls. It's chaotic, but somehow it all works together." "I never thought about it that way," David replied. "I guess when you grow up here, you just accept it as normal." "That's the problem with being too familiar with something," she said, tossing a small stone into the water. "You stop seeing how special it really is." David looked at her profile as she watched the ripples spread across the lake. There was something about the way she saw the world that made him want to see things through her eyes too. During their third meeting, at a small cafe in Chinatown, David discovered that Priya had been hiding some of her achievements. When he mentioned struggling with a particular coding problem at work, her face lit up. "Oh, I actually worked on something similar last year," she said casually. "We were trying to optimize database queries for a client who had millions of user records. The trick is to use indexing strategically, but you also need to consider memory usage." She pulled out a napkin and started sketching a diagram that was far more advanced than anything David had expected. Her solution was elegant and efficient, something that would have taken his team weeks to figure out. "This is brilliant," David said, studying her drawing. "How long did it take you to develop this approach?" Priya looked slightly embarrassed. "About 2 weeks of trial and error." But I had help from my team. Your team. I thought you worked as a regular software engineer. Well, I do. But I also lead a small team of developers on special projects. It's nothing major, just solving complex problems for clients who need custom solutions. This was the first hint that Priya had been downplaying her professional accomplishments. Over the following weeks, David began to notice more signs. She would casually mention conferences she had attended, papers she had co-written, and projects she had led, always presenting them as minor contributions rather than major achievements. Their fourth meeting was at his parents' house for Sunday dinner. David was nervous about how Priya would handle his family's scrutiny, but she charmed everyone effortlessly. She helped his mother in the kitchen, discussed business with his father, and even managed to make his usually serious grandfather laugh with stories about her own family. She's wonderful, his mother whispered to him while Priya was showing his young cousin how to fold paper cranes. Smart, beautiful, and she has such a kind heart. You're very lucky. David was beginning to agree, but what surprised him most was realizing that Priya seemed genuinely comfortable with his family. She wasn't trying to impress them or win them over. She was just being herself, and it was working perfectly. After dinner, as they walked in his parents' garden, David brought up something that had been bothering him. Priya, can I ask you something personal? Of course. Why did you agree to this arranged marriage? I mean, you're intelligent, successful, beautiful. You could probably meet anyone you wanted. Priya was quiet for a moment, picking a small flower from his mother's rosebush. Honestly, I was tired of dating men who felt threatened by my career. In Mumbai, I met guys who wanted a traditional wife who would give up her job after marriage. Here in Singapore, during my business trips, I met men who were interested in me because they thought dating a successful woman would make them look good. She twirled the flower between her fingers. I wanted to find someone who would see me as a partner, not as a trophy or a threat. When my parents suggested this arrangement, I figured at least your family was looking for a serious relationship, not just someone to show off. And what about the photos? David asked with a grin. Did you know they were using old pictures of both of us? Priya laughed. I suspected something when your mother kept emphasizing what a good character you had, instead of mentioning anything about your appearance. But I was doing the same thing, wasn't I? I never corrected them when they assumed I was still the shy, overweight girl from college. Why not? Because I wanted someone to like me for who I am on the inside first. Physical attraction is nice, but it fades. I wanted to find someone who could love my mind, my ambitions, and my weird sense of humor. David stopped walking and turned to face her. Your sense of humor isn't weird. It's one of my favorite things about you. Really? Even when I make those terrible puns about technology? Especially then, he said, and he meant it. By their 6th week of meetings, David realized that his feelings had completely changed. He was no longer going through the motions to please his parents. He was genuinely excited to see Priya, to hear about her day, to share his own thoughts and problems with her. She had become the first person he wanted to talk to when something good happened at work, and the first person he thought of when he needed advice. One evening, as they sat in a quiet corner of a bookstore cafe, Priya made an observation that hit him like a lightning bolt. You know what I find interesting about us? She said, looking up from the programming book she had been browsing. We're both perfectionists who are afraid of being judged, but we're completely comfortable being ourselves with each other. What do you mean? Think about it. At work, you're the serious CEO who always has to have the right answer. With your friends, you're the successful guy who's got everything figured out. But with me, you complain about your annoying clients, admit when you don't understand something, and even let me see you when you're frustrated or confused. David realized she was absolutely right. With Priya, he didn't feel the need to pretend to be perfect. He could just be himself, flaws and all. It works both ways, he said. You're not trying to prove how smart you are or how independent you are. You're just you. Maybe that's what real compatibility is, Priya said thoughtfully. Not finding someone who's perfect, but finding someone who makes you feel comfortable being imperfect. That night, as David drove home, he found himself thinking about the future in a way he never had before. For the first time, when he imagined his life 5 years from now, Priya was naturally part of that picture. Not because his parents wanted her there, but because he couldn't imagine it without her. He called his best friend Kevin the next morning. I think I'm falling in love with her, David admitted. The arranged marriage girl? That's great, man. How does she feel about you? I think I hope she might be feeling the same way. But Kevin, this is crazy. 2 months ago, I was dreading this whole arrangement. Now I can't stop thinking about her. Sometimes the best things in life are the ones we don't see coming, Kevin said. Your parents might have known what they were doing after all. As David hung up the phone, he realized that his friend was probably right. His parents hadn't just found him a suitable wife. They had found him someone who challenged him, supported him, and made him want to be a better person. The fact that she was beautiful was just a bonus. The real question now was whether Priya felt the same way about him, and whether they were both ready to admit that this arranged marriage was turning into something much deeper than either of them had expected. 3 months into their engagement, David felt like he was living in a completely different world. What had started as a reluctant obligation had become the highlight of his life. He looked forward to their meetings with the excitement of a teenager going on his first date. But he was about to discover that everything he thought he knew about Priya was just the tip of the iceberg. The revelation came on a Saturday afternoon when Priya asked for his help with something completely ordinary. She was moving some boxes from her temporary apartment in Singapore to a storage facility, and her usual moving company had canceled at the last minute. I hate to ask, she said during their phone call, but would you mind helping me carry a few boxes? It's nothing heavy, just some books and papers I need to sort through. Of course, David replied immediately. I'll be there in an hour. He was happy to help, but more than that, he was curious to see where Priya had been living during her extended stay in Singapore. She had been vague about her living arrangements, mentioning only that she had a small place while she handled some business matters. When David arrived at the address she had given him, he was surprised to find himself standing in front of an expensive high-rise apartment building in the heart of the business district. The lobby was marble and glass with a concierge desk and security guards. This wasn't the modest temporary housing he had imagined. Priya met him at the elevator, looking slightly nervous for the first time since he had known her.
Thank you so much for doing this, she said.
I promise it won't take long. When they entered her apartment, David's jaw nearly dropped. The space was beautiful and spacious, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city skyline. The furniture was modern and expensive, and there were high-end electronics everywhere. This wasn't a temporary rental. This was the home of someone very successful. Priya, he said slowly, this place is incredible. How can you afford something like this on a software engineer's salary? She looked uncomfortable. Well, I've been saving for a long time and I got a good deal on the lease. David didn't push the issue, but he was definitely curious. As they began packing boxes, he couldn't help but notice the contents. There were advanced programming books that even he struggled to understand, industry journals with her name listed as a contributor, and what looked like business contracts in multiple languages. Then he found the box that changed everything. Priya, what are these? He asked, holding up a stack of magazines and newspapers. She looked over and froze. In his hands were copies of Tech Asia Weekly, Forbes India, and Singapore Business Review. On each cover or featured prominently inside were articles about or photos of Priya herself. Rising Stars of Indian Tech, Priya Sharma's AI Revolution, read one headline. Another declared under 30 and already. Changing the game, Singapore's newest tech innovator. There was even a photo of her giving a presentation to what looked like hundreds of people at a major conference. You want to explain this? David asked, but his tone wasn't angry. He was more amazed than anything else. Priya sat down on her couch and put her head in her hands. I was hoping you wouldn't find those until after we got to know each other better. David set the magazines aside and sat down next to her. Priya, these articles are incredible. You're not just a software engineer, are you? Not exactly, she admitted quietly. I own a consulting firm that specializes in artificial intelligence solutions for businesses. We have offices in Mumbai, Singapore, and we just opened one in San Francisco. I've been featured in several tech publications and I speak at conferences around the world. David stared at her. Are you telling me you're basically running an international tech company? A small one, she said quickly. We only have about 40 employees total. 40 employees? Priya, that's not small. That's a real business. He picked up one of the magazines again. It says here that your company's AI platform has been adopted by over 200 major corporations across Asia. 237, actually, she said with a small smile. But who's counting? David shook his head in disbelief. Why didn't you tell me any of this? I've been talking to you about my little software problems like you're a junior developer, when you're probably more successful than I am. That's exactly why I didn't tell you, Priya said, turning to face him. David, do you have any idea how hard it is to date when you're a successful woman in tech? Men either get intimidated and disappear, or they suddenly become very interested in what you can do for their careers. She stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the city below. I've had guys ask me for business advice on the first date. I've had others suddenly lose interest when they realized I made more money than they did. I've even had men who seemed perfect until they started making comments about how I should slow down or focus on family instead of work. David felt a knot forming in his stomach. And you thought I would react the same way? I didn't know, she said honestly. You seem different, but I've been wrong before. I wanted you to like me for who I am as a person, not for what I've accomplished professionally. David got up and joined her at the window. Priya, I'm not intimidated by your success. I'm impressed. I'm amazed. And honestly, I'm a little embarrassed that I've been mansplaining basic coding concepts to someone who probably knows more about technology than I do. That made her laugh. You weren't mansplaining. You were sharing your experiences, and I learned a lot from listening to you. But why hide all of this? Your company, your achievements, everything? Priya was quiet for a moment. Because I wanted to know if you could love me when you thought I was ordinary. I wanted to see if you would still find me interesting when you believed I was just a regular employee with a regular job. I've had too many relationships where men were more interested in my business connections than in me as a person. David felt his heart racing. This was the first time either of them had used the word love, even indirectly. And what did you discover? He asked softly. I discovered that you're the first man I've ever met who made me feel comfortable just being myself. You listen when I talk. You ask for my opinions because you value my thoughts, not because you want to use my insights for your own benefit. You make me laugh and you're not threatened when I challenge your ideas. She turned to face him directly. David, I've been successful in business, but I've been terrible at relationships. I was starting to think that maybe I couldn't have both. Maybe I had to choose between career success and personal happiness. And now?
Now I think maybe I was looking in the wrong places for the wrong things, she said.
Maybe the right person doesn't see success as a threat or a tool. Maybe the right person sees it as just one part of who you are. David reached for her hands. Priya, I need you to know something. I started falling for you when I thought you were a regular software engineer. Learning about your success doesn't change how I feel about you. It just makes me respect you even more. Really? Really. You're brilliant, you're driven, you've built something incredible. And you did it all while being kind, funny, and humble. How could I not be amazed by that? For the first time since he had found the magazines, Priya smiled genuinely. I was so scared you'd feel differently about me. The only thing I feel differently about is myself, David said. I feel lucky that someone as accomplished as you would want to spend time with me. Don't say that, Priya said firmly. David, you've built a successful company too. You're intelligent, ambitious, and you treat people with respect. But more importantly, you make me feel like I can be completely honest with you. That's rarer than any business success. As they continued unpacking boxes, David discovered more evidence of Priya's achievements. Awards from tech organizations, invitations to speak at prestigious conferences, business proposals from major corporations wanting to partner with her company. Each discovery made him more impressed, not more intimidated. There's something I need to tell you too, David said as they loaded the last box into his car. What? I've been doing some research on AI applications for customer service. I was thinking of expanding into that area, but I was worried about the technical challenges. He paused. Would you be interested in consulting for my company? As a business partner, I mean. Not because we're whatever we are, but because you're the best person I know for the job. Priya's face lit up. Are you seriously offering to go into business with me? If you're interested, we could start small, see how we work together professionally. David, that sounds amazing. But are you sure you want to mix business with personal relationships? I'm sure I want to work with the smartest person I know, he said. Everything else we can figure out as we go. As they drove back to her apartment, both of them were quiet, lost in their own thoughts. The dynamic between them had shifted, but not in the way either had feared. Instead of creating distance, the truth had brought them closer together. They were no longer just two people their parents had matched up. They were partners who had chosen each other. By the time their wedding day arrived 6 months later, David often caught himself thinking about how dramatically his life had changed. The man who had walked reluctantly into that restaurant meeting was gone, replaced by someone who couldn't imagine his future without Priya by his side. The morning of the wedding, David stood in front of his bedroom mirror adjusting his tie for what felt like the 100th time. His best friend Kevin was there, making sure everything was perfect. "You know," Kevin said, "I've never seen you this nervous before a big presentation, and you've pitched to rooms full of millionaire investors." David laughed. "This is different. Those presentations were just about money. This is about the rest of my life. Having second thoughts? Not even for a second," David replied without hesitation. "I just want everything to be perfect for her." The wedding ceremony was a beautiful blend of Chinese and Indian traditions that both families had worked together to plan. As David waited at the altar, watching guests file in, he thought about how much his perspective on arranged marriages had changed. What he had once seen as an outdated custom, he now understood as a different way of finding love, one that had worked beautifully for him and Priya. When the music started and Priya appeared at the back of the hall, David felt his breath catch in his throat. She looked absolutely stunning in a red and gold Indian sari that had belonged to her grandmother. But it wasn't just her beauty that moved him. It was the smile on her face, the way her eyes found his immediately, and the certainty he saw there that matched his own feelings completely. As she walked down the aisle, David remembered their conversation from the week before, when they had talked about how their relationship had developed. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if we had met differently?" Priya had asked. Like at a coffee shop or through mutual friends. David had thought about it seriously. "Honestly, I don't think we would have given each other a real chance. I probably would have been intimidated by how accomplished you are, and you might have written me off as just another tech CEO who was more interested in talking about himself than listening." "You're probably right," she had agreed. "The arranged meeting forced us to really get to know each other without all the usual dating games and pretenses." During the ceremony, as they exchanged vows they had written themselves, David spoke from his heart. "Priya, 6 months ago, I thought I was agreeing to this marriage to make my parents happy. I had no idea that I was actually agreeing to find my best friend, my intellectual equal, and the love of my life all in one person. You've taught me that real love isn't about finding someone perfect, but about finding someone who makes you want to be the best version of yourself." When it was Priya's turn, her voice was strong and clear. "David, I spent years thinking that success and love were opposites, that I would have to choose between career achievement and personal happiness. You showed me that the right partner doesn't compete with your dreams. They help make those dreams bigger and better. You've given me the courage to be completely myself, and that's the greatest gift anyone has ever given me." The reception was a joyful celebration that brought together David's Chinese family, Priya's Indian relatives, and friends from both of their professional lives. During dinner, David's father stood up to make a toast that surprised everyone. "When David was younger," he began, "he used to ask me how his mother and I knew we were right for each other in an arranged marriage. I told him that love would grow with time, but I don't think he believed me. Now I see him with Priya and I realize I was only half right. Love does grow with time. But what I didn't understand then was that the best arranged marriages aren't really arranged at all. They're just introductions between two people who are ready to choose each other." As the months after their wedding passed, David and Priya settled into married life with surprising ease. They had decided to live in Singapore, splitting their time between managing their respective companies and working on their joint business venture. Their collaboration in business turned out to be as successful as their personal relationship. Priya's AI expertise combined with David's customer service platform created something revolutionary. Within 3 months of launching their joint project, they had signed contracts with 5 major corporations across Asia. "We make a good team," Priya said one evening as they worked late in their shared home office. "In business or in life?" David asked, looking up from his laptop. "Both," she replied with a smile. "Though I have to admit, working with your spouse has some interesting challenges. Like when you disagree with my code during the day and then expect me to cook dinner with you in the evening." "Hey, I cook too," David protested. "And for the record, I wasn't disagreeing with your code. I was suggesting minor optimizations." "Minor optimizations," Priya repeated with mock seriousness. Is that what we're calling it now? These playful arguments had become a regular part of their routine, and David loved every minute of it. Priya challenged him professionally in ways that made him better at his job, and personally in ways that made him better as a person. A year after their wedding, their joint venture was acquired by a major international corporation for an amount that made both of them wealthy beyond anything they had imagined. But the financial success wasn't what mattered most to David. "You know what I realized today?" he told Priya as they celebrated the acquisition at their favorite restaurant, the same place where they had their first meeting. "What? A year ago, I thought success meant building a company and making money. Now I realize success means building a life with someone who understands your dreams and helps you achieve them while pursuing their own." Priya reached across the table and took his hand. "I've learned something too. I used to think that admitting you need someone made you weak. Now I know that choosing to share your life with someone who makes you stronger is actually the smartest business decision you can make." 2 years after their wedding, David and Priya had become one of Singapore's most talked about power couples in the tech industry. They were regularly invited to speak at conferences together, and business magazines wrote articles about their successful partnership, both in marriage and in business. But David's favorite moments weren't the public ones. They were the quiet Sunday mornings when they read the newspaper together, the late nights when they stayed up talking about their dreams for the future, and the simple daily moments when he was reminded of how lucky he was to have found someone who truly understood him. "Do you ever miss being single?" Priya asked him one evening as they walked along the beach near their home. "Never," David replied immediately. "Do you?" "Not even a little bit," she said. "Though I do sometimes wonder what my life would have been like if I had refused the arranged marriage. Probably very successful professionally and very lonely personally," David said. "At least that's where I was headed. Our parents really knew what they were doing, didn't they?" "They did," David agreed. "Though I think they got a little lucky too. They couldn't have known we'd fall in love." "Maybe they didn't know we'd fall in love," Priya said thoughtfully, "but I think they knew we'd be good for each other. They saw something we couldn't see ourselves." As they continued their walk, David reflected on how completely his understanding of love and marriage had changed. He had once believed that real love had to be spontaneous and dramatic, like something from a movie. Now he knew that real love could also be practical and thoughtful, growing from mutual respect and shared values into something deeper and more lasting than passion alone. Their love story had become a testament to the idea that sometimes the best relationships come from the most unexpected places, and that true compatibility isn't always obvious at first glance. David had learned that real beauty lies not in perfect features or instant attraction, but in finding someone who challenges you to become the best version of yourself while accepting you exactly as you are. Looking back, David realized that his parents' deception with those old photos had been the greatest gift they could have given him. It had forced him to look beyond surface appearances and discover that the most important connections happen when two people are brave enough to be completely honest with each other, flaws and all. His mother's expression hardened. "Love will grow with time. Your father and I didn't love each other when we first got married, but look at us now. We've built a beautiful life together." "That was different," David protested. "Times have changed. People expect more from marriage now." "Times may have changed," his father said firmly, "but family values remain the same. David, you're our only son. Everything we've worked for will be yours one day, but we need to know that our legacy will continue. We need to know that you'll have a family to carry on our name and traditions." Then came the ultimatum that changed everything. His mother leaned forward and spoke in a tone he had never heard before. "David, we've been more than patient with you, but now you have to choose. Either you agree to meet this girl and give this arrangement a proper chance, or you'll have to find your own way in life. We won't continue to support someone who has no respect for family values." David couldn't believe what he was hearing. "Are you threatening to cut me off from the family business?" "We're not threatening anything," his father replied. "We're simply stating facts. This business was built for family. If you don't want to be part of a family, then you don't need to be part of the business." For the next 2 weeks, David barely spoke to his parents. He threw himself into work, staying at the office until late every night. But the ultimatum kept weighing on his mind. Was he being selfish? Was he throwing away everything his parents had worked for just because he didn't find a girl in some photos attractive? His grandmother, who was 92 and the wisest person he knew, finally convinced him to reconsider. "David," she said during one of his visits, "sometimes in life we have to trust that our elders know things we don't. Your parents aren't asking you to do this to hurt you. They want you to be happy, but they also understand that happiness comes in many forms. But Grandma, what if I can never love her? What if we're both miserable? Then you'll deal with that when it happens," she replied with a gentle smile. "But what if the opposite happens? What if you discover something beautiful that you never expected? Your grandfather wasn't the most handsome man when I married him, but he had the kindest heart I ever knew. Sometimes the best gifts come in unexpected packages." After many sleepless nights and long conversations with himself, David finally made his decision. He would meet this Priya Sharma and give the arrangement a chance. Not because he was excited about it, but because he owed his parents at least that much. They had sacrificed everything to give him the opportunities he had today. When he called his mother to tell her his decision, he could hear the relief in her voice. "You're doing the right thing, son. I have a good feeling about this girl. There's something special about her, I can sense it." David wasn't so sure, but he had made his choice. He would go through with the meeting, be polite and respectful, and see what happened. At worst, he would have fulfilled his obligation to his parents. At best, maybe his grandmother was right about unexpected gifts. Little did he know that his entire understanding of love, attraction, and life was about to be turned completely upside down.